Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name's Baron. I'm the managing director and founder of Tiny Temple, based in Pennycook. We are timber cladding specialists. We manufacture everything in-house here in a farm shed. It's a 15,000 square foot farm shed, and we do all the processes, totally bespoke stuff we can do. I'll run you through a little bit of the journey, and then this CPD is generally just about going through the process of specifying timber cladding and like the main things to consider and little caveats to think about when you're choosing timber for a project. And it's kind of based on a lot of the workflow that we go through with clients when they come in here and the decision making process, because there's a lot of information, a lot of options, and to be able to simplify it, that just makes the process a bit smoother and easier for everyone. This will be recorded, and it'll just be an internal recording that can be shared for reference after, which can be which Holly can send to everyone at the end, or I can send a link to Holly to share. Okay, can you see the screen? Is that okay? Has the CPD come up in the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Great.
It's meant to be showing a video, is it?
It's a still video. It's just the title. So here we go.
Okay.
Now we're rolling. So yeah, these are basically the topics that I'll cover in this CPD. Just going into the species, types of timber, how it's fixed, what it's fixed to, things to consider, coatings, a little bit of our portfolio, and yeah. So Tiny Temple got its name because I basically built a meditation hut for my meditation teacher in the back garden of our community, and experimented with charring the timber on it. I'd never built anything like that before. This was Scottish larch from a local sawmill that I bought, and experimented with a blowtorch, charring it and then oiling it. I went on to build a few kind of little cabins and an off-grid tiny house off the back of it, kind of experimenting with charring timber. It was a lot of fun, interesting, and it kind of made me want to get into producing timber cladding. This is one in Innerleithen in the Scottish borders. It's an artist studio. Also, I meant to mention, there just shout out questions at any point, but there'll also be a space for asking questions at the end. It should be an hour CPD and 45-minute talk, if I can keep to that and don't blab on too much, with 15 minutes at the end for questions. But if you have to leave at any point, just head off. This was the little tiny cabin I built. This is in Midlothian, kind of edge, Ledburn, close to the Scottish borders. It's a little 1.5 floor mezzanine compost toilet in the middle of nowhere. So from building them, wanting to get into cladding, I bought this 6-head planer. This is the machine that makes timber cladding from a liquidation sale from a company that shut down. I had no idea how it worked. I started cleaning it, taking it to bits, and just learning about it and how it makes timber cladding and the whole process, and rented this farm shed, which is in Pennycook, where we're based now. Started off with a small corner, and now we've got that big rectangular bit. There's the Pentlands in the background, and Pennycook. It's a beautiful view, especially on a nice day. And it's this was when we moved in. It had 150 cows in it, and then after a couple of years, 2.5 years, 3 years, we've turned it into a cladding production facility with kind of state-of-the-art machinery, all the processes, factory coating lines, sanding, brushing, charring, make all the tooling here so we can make any shape of timber cladding as well as in any species. We have a showroom internally and externally, so you can send clients in, you can see what we do, get a good feel for weathered stuff outside, see how it looks unweathered inside for internal projects, and external stuff. And a big banquet table of samples to take away. And we can also post them out next day, Royal Mail, if you want them sent to the office or directly to a client, and there's no charge for samples. The benefits of using timber cladding, it's a natural beauty and warmth and character to to timber and uniqueness. Design versatility, there's basically anything we can make out of timber, any species, any shape. It can be up to 230mm wide by 110mm thick, down to 42mm wide by 15mm thick. Within all those sizes, we can make basically any shape, interlocking, waves, geometric patterns, and mixed widths with fins that interlock, secret fix. I'll go into the profiles in a wee bit. Any colour as well, any RAL code, different options for coatings, different paint builds, translucent, how translucent it is, matte, kind of gloss, and textures. So we can do sawn textures, sanded, brushed. Timber is one of the most sustainable building materials because it's renewable, it's lightweight, and it's also repairable at the end of life. And all the timber we sell is non-toxic as well. It's more pleasant and easier to work with than other man-made materials. So timbers we typically work with, and you might see quite popular in Scotland, is Scottish larch. It's probably, it's the most popular homegrown species. It's 18% moisture content. It can be a little bit more prone to movement than other timbers, so it's just something to watch out for. Can you hear me okay?
There really are. And thank you so much for listening.
Could everyone go on mute? Oh, that's Katrina.
Someone asking a question?
I think Katrina didn't have her microphone on mute.
All right.
Now, so I think you're okay.
All good.
Sorry about
Is the connection okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me clear? Yeah, cool. So Scottish larch can be a little bit more prone to movement than other timbers. This is especially a bit more when you specify long lengths that are narrow, so like a 4.8 metre length and 42 can be at the mercy of how it's grown. Scottish larch can arrive to us perfect. We can cut it and it can want to move because of tension inside the wood. It can be from whether it's grown on a slope or it's grown on wet ground. There can be tension in the wood that can be released when it's cut or after it's been installed. So we tend to suggest sort of profiles between 92mm wide up to 140. We tend to avoid suggesting going for like really wide profiles like 185 in Scottish larch, just because it can move and cup more than other species, especially timbers that are thermally modified. We recommend not coating Scottish larch in dark colours because the dark colour draws in more heat. It can make it more prone to moving. One thing with Scottish larch is making sure the sapwood's graded out, because that's the non-durable part of the tree, and if there's any small bit, it has to be on the back. It's durability class 3, so it lasts 30 years plus without any coatings. And for an open rain screen, like a plain all round with a 6mm gap, the price starts from like £30 plus VAT per square metre, and that's for like a sawn board. Here's some examples of Scottish larch. This is a secret fix profile on a sauna built by Bob & Co. They're sauna builders in Leith in Edinburgh. This is some Scottish larch that's been Euro Class B treated in-house by us for a school in Scotland, in Fife. Another timber we work with is Western Red Cedar. It has incredible smell. It's a very nice timber. It's beautiful. It has quite a mix of colours in it, so it's just something to bear in mind. We do profiles which have double 2-in-1, so it's quicker to install, less overlap, like loss to the coverage. But if you're doing a randomised pattern with this, or even just using this profile with Western Red Cedar, because each board has quite a distinctively different colour, when it's a double, that double board is a different colour, so it looks a bit strange. So if you go for a Western Red Cedar, a double profile can look a bit odd. It's better to go for narrower single boards. It's durability class 2, and it can be used in saunas if it's kiln dried, internally or externally. We don't recommend Scottish larches used internally just because of the movement and how kind of extreme that environment especially with central heating can be on timber. Western red cedar is quite a bit more expensive. It's £73 plus VAT square metre. Here is Western red cedar with the CU coating on it, which makes it go an even colour. It does kind of even out the variation between the different boards. Yeah, it's a nice finish. And so what is modified timber? We do thermally modified timber and timber that's gone through a process called acetylation. So basically, modifying timber takes timber that is typically can be fast grown and not inherently durable, and it makes them into timbers that are as durable as most hardwoods. So it's a very sustainable process. This is a Bodo, which is now known as an imbue, going into a kiln in New Zealand. So it's cooked up to 230 degrees. It increases the dimensional stability and resistance to rot and insects all the way through, and it's in a controlled oxygen deprived environment. They bring the moisture content down to like 0% inside the kiln. They bring the temperature up to 230 degrees, and it basically caramelizes all the sugars in the wood, and it cooks out all the resin. So it makes it changes the cell structure, making the wood less prone to absorbing moisture, which means it's less prone to expansion and contraction. And because it doesn't swell and shrink, it makes coatings last generally twice as long than if you just applied it on larch. Because when it swells and shrinks, it creates lots of microscopic cracks, and the weather gets into those cracks and causes the coatings to fail like a lot earlier than they would. So we typically always recommend thermally modified or modified timbers for factory coating because there's a lot less maintenance. For instance, thermal pine, which is Scandinavian redwood, once that's thermally modified, it's the same durability class as oak, which is durability class 2, which is like 40 years plus. This is imbue. It's from New Zealand. It's a thermally modified timber, and even with the shipping from New Zealand, it's certified carbon negative because the trees take 30-40 years to grow. Once they're thermally modified, the timber installed in a building will last 50-60 years plus. And even with the shipping and like boat transport from New Zealand, it offsets more carbon than it takes to produce. It's a knot-free timber. The radiata pine trees are pruned as they're grown and managed sustainably, grown in plantations. So pruning them removes all the knots. Imbue is actually the same tree used, the same species is used for imbue as it is for akoya. They're both radiata pine. Here it's been thermally modified, and with akoya it's been essentially pickled through a process called acetylation. This is imbue, which has been charred and brushed and then coated in CU. So basically the spring wood, like the softer wood between the grain, will weather quite light, whereas the late wood, the more dense wood that's been charred, will stay darker. So it gives you a nice bit of contrast, even though this timber is going to keep going a bit lighter. Any questions so far? I know I've spoken a lot. Okay. So this is...
Sorry, a question from me.
Hello.
And apologies if you mentioned it, but red cedar, where does it come from?
Canada. Generally, like the west coast of Canada.
Cool. That's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this one is, imbue that's been charred and brushed for a house in Mull, and the client decided to leave it to weather naturally, so the whole thing would silver. This is some charred and brushed imbue on a project quite near our mill. It's the whole house was cladded in it in mixed widths. It's a secret fixed profile, or no, there's a shadow gap. And this is all the same timber, just quite a lot of different finishes that are possible with it. Can all be used internally or externally. Thermal pine is probably our most popular timber that we offer. Yeah, it's thermally modified. It has knots, so it does look a bit different to the clear grade timbers. I don't know if you can see this big wall there. That's all thermal pine that's been brushed and coated in a black translucent stain. The knots do look very consistent, so it does have its own beauty. Can still look quite contemporary, whereas something like larch, where the knots are a bit more randomized and unpredictable, can look a bit more rustic. It's a good balance between performance and cost, because it's about £34 plus VAT a square metre, but it's a very stable, durable timber, which is very versatile. We can get it in a lot of different sizes for making fins, and we can even get it in laminate posts, even at like 92 by 92. That's the wall I just showed you. This is it coated in a grey coating. So even though it's brown, we can coat it into different colours. Get quite different finishes. This is it as it comes, just planed without any finish, and it would just silver naturally. All the timber we supply and offer, if it's not treated or coated, it will silver down naturally. They're all inherently durable once they've been modified, or just as they come, like larch and western red cedar, so they don't necessarily need to be coated. The only difference is if they're not coated, they'll weather unevenly, where they get more or less, rain and sunshine. But there's ways around that. Frac Noir, this is a thermally modified hardwood that's been sustainably plantation grown from Africa. It's a non-durable hardwood that's quite readily available, that's been thermally modified to make it very durable, the same durability classes Imbue and Accoya. This is what it looks like. This is it. It looks a bit like walnut, but it's about half the price. It's got a very beautiful grain. It's very dense. And it weathers to quite a light colour, more so than all the other timbers. So when it silvers, it goes it goes a bit more white than silvery grey. And when we apply CU coatings, which I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with, it's an even weathering coating that accelerates the weathering, but it also makes the timber go a bit lighter than the natural silvery grey. When we apply that on Frac, it goes almost white, like a really beautiful light colour. And this is it on the left. I don't know if it's your left on the screen, as it comes. And then once we apply the CU and it's been outside curing for about 8 months, it goes like this super nice light colour, and the grain just looks, it's got the grain of a hardwood, so it looks very distinct and beautiful. And then acetylation, it's basically the process of what you would do with conkers at school to make the conkers stronger. They're pickled. The Accoya, which is thermally modified radiata pine, is pickled under heat and in a vacuum. Well, no, in a pressure chamber under a lot of pressure, so it goes all the way through the timber. The thermal modification and the acetylation, they treat the timber all the way through. So if you cut it, it doesn't need to. It's not non-durable inside. It's the same durability class all the way through the timber. Unlike green treated stuff that's dipped, it only goes in a matter of millimeters, or it should go in 10 millimeters. But Accoya is actually warranted 50 years against rot when it's used as cladding, and 25 years in contact with fresh water or in contact with the ground. So if you've got a piece of Accoya and it's installed in water and it rots in 25 years, Accoya will replace it, which is quite incredible. Like they've got a very good product. But it is quite expensive. It's about £90 per square metre. But just gives you that reassurance that it's going to last, and it's extremely stable as well. It's probably the most stable timber that we offer, so like least prone to movement. So things to consider when specifying timber cladding. This is a 117 by 20mm double Secravix profile. It comes from a 125 by 25mm standard size sawn board, which is shown below. We can make any size of cladding, any shape, but the standard sizes that we offer, and generally most timber cladding companies offer, they come from the maximum size you can get out those raw sawn boards. Most companies buy pretty much the same nominal size of timber. So we've worked out this is the biggest size we can get without having rough edges that haven't, been planed fully all the way along. So perfect quality with minimal rejects. We can make it smaller, but you'd be buying, or the client would be paying for what's coming out that larger size. So the next size down would be a 92mm coming out of a 100mm board. But if you wanted something that was like 96mm, it would have to come out of that 125 board. So yeah, the standard sizes are the most cost effective. Here's some of our standard cladding profiles. We do have more which I'm to add. But yeah, triple misspelt. We do that in 32, 26mm thick. All cladding should be installed with at least a 1mm gap between boards. That just helps with expansion and movement. Even if they're very stable timbers, it's always best practice just to leave that little bit of tolerance for expansion. The worst thing is if you install wood that's like very, very dry, like super dry Scottish larch, and you butt it all up really hard to all the other boards, and then it gets soaking wet if it's installed like beginning of winter or something, or into winter, then they want to swell. If they all swell like 0.5 millimeter and push each other, that 0.5 millimeter compounds over a whole wall. So if it's a very long elevation, there's more risk of that happening. So having that little 1mm gap gives you just a bit of tolerance from expansion. It's important that the profiles are designed to shed water. So ideally, if you're going horizontal, we'd always suggest using like a rain screen instead of just a square edge planed all around. And the tongue and groove, you can see that from the second top that that tongue bit is pointing upwards, so it sheds the water in the correct way. The main way to have timber last as long as it should is that it can dry out between wetting cycles. It's kind of like your shower at home. If you don't have the shower like ventilated enough and it doesn't get a chance to dry out, you can see mold grows a lot faster. So yeah, adequate ventilation is super important, and not having cladding sat in water. So where it abuts to anywhere, having like at least a 10mm kind of gap where it can fully drip off. Secrefix profiles save enormously on installation costs. As you can see with the Secrefix down there, third from bottom, there's just one little screw that goes into the tongue. This is what that screw looks like. It's a 3.2 by 40 drill point, so it doesn't have a screw point. It essentially bores a hole through the tongue, in front of the head of the screw, so it doesn't split the tongue. Thermal wood can be a little bit more brittle than other timbers, but this, because it's so small and it's got a drill point, it'll drill a hole in that tongue and then it'll fix it, and it generally doesn't split the tongues. Towards the edges, we'd always suggest pre-drilling, but with these screws, it's not too much of an issue. The benefit of Secrefix is that you don't have to line up all the screw heads, which can be enormously laborious. You can fit it anywhere kind of on the counterband because the next board will cover that screw head. It can even like double the speed of the cladding installation. And you have the appearance of no screw heads, which might be preferable. Also, wider cladding profiles are typically a little bit less expensive per square meter. The double Secrefix and the Secrefix, there's a 20mm overlap on those profiles, and so if you go for a 145 wide profile like this, that 20mm proportionally isn't too much, but if you go for a 66mm wide profile, that 20mm overlap is like a third, or it's like quite a huge amount of the wood that's hidden overlapped. So it can cost about 20-25% more per square meter difference in the cost. Just something to bear in mind. This is a crusher bead that we've come up with and put into all our profiles. So this gives you the allowance of that 1mm gap if the contractor doesn't separate the boards by a mil when he's installing them. Basically, rather than having the whole flat surface in contact, when it expands, it's going to crush that little bead before it blows out the wood and it bends away from the wall. So it basically gives you a little bit of extra tolerance just for expansion, because that little bead will it'll crush and it'll give you that expansion. But when you install it, it gives you that distance. We make all the profile knives in-house, so starts off from CAD drawings, cut into CNC templates, which we grind into the knives that go on the planer. We do it all in-house, so we can make any shape of timber cladding. This is the grinding machine, and on it is the block that goes on the moulder. That's the 6-headed planer moulder that a rough sawn board goes in, and it comes out with all the sides planed, smooth, with the tongue and groove, and it also straightens the wood as well. So it just takes out any deviation. And that's it planing the face at the end. It planes up to 20 meters a minute. All the sawdust goes for bedding for animals right now and gets recycled. So yeah, some of the bespoke profiles we do, because we make the tooling in-house, we can make any shape. Like this is it's a wave shown there. That's a tongue and groove. It's got the little crusher bead in it. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. And yeah, they fit together.
Can I jump in and ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I was looking at your large cladding. I was wondering what profile you'd recommend, just because you were talking about the more movement with the large cladding.
We don't tend to recommend secret fix at the wider sizes, like a 142, just because you've got that one screw holding in the tongue. We would recommend a shadow gap face fix. So at 142 wide, we would suggest this is a Koya face fixing it. So there would be, at this width, there would be two 4.5 by 50 screws in the face. Secret fixing at 92 mil wide on Scottish Larch is fine. I think the main thing is like cupping in the wood. So shadow gap, like face fix profiles work well. Secret fix at a narrower width, like 92. Yeah, also helps. But secret fixing Scottish Larch, it's always better at narrower widths. Like tongue and groove as well can be secret fixed. That's a tongue and groove profile in view. And that can be secret fixed through the tongue like that, and so it's all hidden fixings. With Scottish Larch, we'd probably recommend doing that. Like this is a 145 or 140 board. We'd recommend doing it on Scottish Larch at like 92. Just that cupping can have an effect. Yeah. Do you typically specify?
Perfect, thank you.
Do you typically specify timber cladding yourself, and what width would you usually do it, or is it totally random?
It depends really, but we've just had a client that's quite keen on the large cladding, so
Yeah.
I was wondering, just because you mentioned like that it's more prone to the movement, so
Yeah.
what you would specify.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. This is a triple profile. This is a 32 mil thick in the frappe. It's a closed board, so it can meet Euroclass B requirements with the coating that we can apply in house. We also do it in a 26 mil. It's a 32 mil in thermal pine there. Yeah, just gives the appearance of individual battens, but it's a closed board, so it has its benefits. You don't need to worry about the spacing of all the battens. It gives you all the spacing, and so a lot quicker to install. This is a Koya in like a panel system that we've come up with. So it's got a tongue and groove like that between each. So like the fin and then the wider boards, they all have a tongue and a groove, so they can be secret fixed. In a Koya, that 145 width's like totally fine for being secret fixed. We can make the fins, that's shown in 42 by 42, but we can do it in like a 92 deep by 32 mil wide fin, and we can do like randomized patterns of things like that. So it's quite cool. We get asked a lot about hidden fixings on a panel with fins and boards between. So yeah, we came up with something that it's modular and they can all interlock with each other. this is just having a bit of fun. That was the wave mixed with one of those fins just before. They all fit together because of the same system. And we're kind of like adding more and more different profiles to that system, so they're all modular. This is something a bit crazy that we tried. This is the imbue. It's been deep charred before it's been coated. So we would usually coat the deep char in a matte black to protect the char layer. So yeah, knots or no knots is typically the first question that we ask customers. It helps kind of sort out a lot of options. Knot free timbers typically cost more. They do look a bit more clean and contemporary if there's that benefit. As I said, the knots in larch are a bit more random and can be a bit uneven. Knots in thermal pine more consistent and clean, so it can look a little bit more modern and easy on the eye. Coatings can hide the knots as well, so stuff like the thermal pine, if it's coated in CU or if it's coated in a black coating, the knots are less obvious. That's thermal pine on the left and imbue on the right. We offer fixed lengths, so you know what wastage you're going to have. We typically try and stock all our timbers in 3 and 4.8 meters. If you don't know what you're going to get, it's quite hard to predict what the overall cost of the job is going to be. You don't know if you're going to be lopping off like 1.2 meters off each bit of timber to not have any joins. So we'd say pretty much everyone goes for set lengths. Joins will completely minimize your wastage if you've got like gables, strange odd shapes of elevations. It can be a little bit more laborious on site for like installing joins, but can be less wasteful. Like if you've got a gable or rounded dormer. And joins should always be cut with an angle to help the water run off. The angle allows the water to run to the front of the face of the cladding, and also that point of the angle means that any water droplets will drip much earlier, because if you've just got a flat bit, that water droplet will hang on to that flat edge, that flat end, a lot longer than an angle. So when it's an angle, it'll drip a lot easier, so it'll dry out a lot quicker. So it does help the ends last longer. For fixings, went through the Secret Fix system. We do a TIGA clip system, which is this is a stainless steel clip that clips onto a profile that we've made. This is like a rain screen, and these stainless steel clips, they just clip into the back like that, and they give you a 6mm gap, but we can make tooling to make any gap. And basically the next board just slots on, and then, first you would screw that into the wall, put your next board with the clips in it, and that one screws to the wall. So it's kind of like Secret Fix, but for like an open rain screen profile. There's no fixing into the wood, and so not having any perforation in the timber just helps the wood stay drier and more protected. Especially if you've got a coating on it, it helps kind of keep the coating intact. We can make this in different widths, different depths. We've got a customer that we're making this into like an actual a narrower fin, but with the system. So also it'll be a Secret Fix clip system, but like the Akoya panel system I showed you that's Secret Fixed, it's an open rain screen. Hope that makes sense. Basically we could do random widths and fins, but use this system here so it fits into a fin. And face fix screws. All our fixings we would always suggest using stainless steel, because normal steel or even sometimes galvanized can react with the tannins in the wood, and it can leave bleed lines that are quite unsightly and very obvious. This is what they look like. It can be fixed with oxalic acid, which is basically like a wood bleach that you can buy online. It's like readily available, and you just rub it into the affected areas, and then it'll lift those stains, and it pretty much completely gets rid of them in most cases. It's quite amazing, because it can be a bit of a disaster when all the lovely new cladding is all installed, and then the blacksmith comes and he cuts some gates, and all the little metal filings from cutting metal or something land on the timber, and then it rains, and then weeks later everyone's totally miffed by why there's all these crazy black marks on the timber. But yeah, cutting metal or having steel in contact with the wood when it rains and the moisture gets in there as well, it can cause that to happen. So yeah, for horizontal cladding, it's recommended that you install vertical counterbattens. The main thing, as I said, for the cladding to last as long as it should is that it can ventilate and breathe all the way around. And so for horizontal cladding, if you put vertical battens on the wall, it allows that cavity behind the cladding to ventilate all the way up. So if it gets wet behind for whatever reason, or the boards get soaked, it can just dry out a lot easier. For vertical cladding, you have to put vertical battens on the wall first, and then horizontal counterbattens. If you just put horizontal counterbattens, it blocks off that cavity and doesn't allow it to like freely ventilate up. So you have to have those doubled up battens. If you've got a very limited build out from the wall, I don't know how much like retrofit or that kind of stuff you guys do, but if you're very limited for space, horizontal cladding gives you a build out of like 40 mil overall, whereas a minimum build out of 40 mil. Whereas if it's vertical cladding, the minimum would typically be like 60 mil. So you're very tight for space, or trying to fit it under a sill. Horizontal cladding gives you like 20 mil extra. Space. We make the counterbattens here out of thermal pine, which is super durable, stable, and planed. Tile battens people use from like merchants, but they're not treated when you cut them, and they're not necessarily all like regular thicknesses. We do battens in 42 by 20 and 42 by 42, but we can also make custom size counterbattens. We can also factory coat them black if you've got an open rain screen, and we do slope battens as well that help shed the water into the cavity, and it drips into the cavity and away from the timber. Maximum spacing of 600 mil between the counterbattens. Wouldn't recommend going any further than that. In some instances, we might recommend going like 450, depending on species and fixing method. So yeah, all timber goes silvery grey. When it's exposed outside, it will hardly go silvery grey when it's, sheltered or on a north elevation. Here's just behind my house, that's my son, Sebastian. You can see the eaves, the overhangs, where it's not really, it's been there for about 12 years, that building, at Glentress. And you can see the difference of the weathering. Weathering's when the UV from the sun breaks down the lignin in the wood. Factory coating, there's ways to reduce the effects of that. We can apply a grey coating, which basically is that grey shown on the left. So it's called a sacrificial coating, and so when it's applied, all the timber is that shade of the weathered grey. So any areas that then do fade will fade to the same level of grey. So that's called sacrificial coating, and that's done with a translucent stain like Sicken 771. We also apply a CU coating, which is a silicate-based product that we would factory coat on all four sides, and it basically, when it's applied, the timber still looks the same. Like the frappe would look brown like this. When it's applied, it basically cures with the carbon dioxide and the moisture in the environment, and it uses that to basically weather rather than just the UV from the sun. So it basically makes all the elevations fade very evenly and consistently, and looks very clean. It goes into the wood, it creates a silicate network, and it hardens over time. So it's not like a typical coating that would fade and like weather and fade off and that needs to be reapplied, we would say it lasts 15 years plus without any re-maintenance, only just cleaning if there's a lot of trees nearby or something. We apply factory finishes here, and we would always sand the timber and prepare it before it's coated. It keys the surface, it helps open up the grain. Factory coating is basically painting timber in a very controlled environment where the timber is the right humidity, temperature, the room's the right humidity, temperature as well, and yeah, it's just making sure that the coating is going to bond to the timber as well as it should, just so the coating will last as long as the manufacturers say it will. There's also not the risk of it raining inside, like on site if you're hand applying it. There's a lot of variables, and it can really negatively affect the coatings. We coat all 4 sides here, so coating the back just helps the boards against cupping and warping, because it just helps create an equilibrium of moisture in the wood. Vacuum coating, as you saw in the video there, it goes through a machine and it applies a very even coating around all the timber. It basically goes through a box that is pumped full of paint, and then through the mouth where it goes through, you can see there's a little 2mm gap. It's sucking air in there, so it's stopping the paint falling out, and as it goes through, it gets completely coated in the grooves, every single undulation of the wood, and as it comes out the other side, it's sucking off the extra coating at a very controlled rate, and so you don't end up with different thicknesses of paint over the timber. You can see it's like a super even application, and we can monitor how much material has gone on the wood per meter squared. So for this coating shown, it's like 150 grams per square meter wet. So we measure all that and make sure we apply it at the correct rate. We're the only company in Scotland that produced Shushugiban, like charred Japanese timber cladding. A lot of the species that we use are naturally very durable, so durability isn't too much of an issue. It's not proven that it increases the durability massively, so we say that most of the effect is visual and for the appearance of the timber. It's a technique that's been practiced for thousands of years. In Japan, there's temples that are like over 1,000 years old, bits of timber that have been charred that are still sat there. Farmers used to use it on fence posts to make the bottom of the posts last longer. But yeah, it brings out a lot of the natural beauty of the wood, and yeah, it creates very interesting textures. Yeah. A lot of people use like the deep char technique on Scottish larch, but we don't really recommend that. So like this is the deep char. Different species behave very differently to charring. Scottish larch can flake off, like the char layer can be quite thin, and so it can have a tendency to come off. So we don't offer deep char in Scottish larch. We would only really offer deep char finish like that in Akoya and Imbue, just because when you char it, the surface is super solid. Like it's very, very different. It doesn't come off. And then we factory coat it through the line that I showed you to give it a matte black coating. We can paint it in any RAL number after. And when you coat it, it just stops the char coming off onto clothes and protects it. The coating would have to be reapplied after like 8 to 10 years. Deep char though, if you really try and score it, you can. So if there's like a narrow bit with like an alleyway with kids' bikes or something like super high traffic areas, we probably recommend not using deep char, just because if you really try and score it, you can. It can be touched up with a black coating, but it doesn't look the same. Outside natural weathering, it's very resistant, it's good, but just not super high traffic areas. For busy areas, if you want to specify Shushugiban, the charred and brush finish like that is where the carbon layer is being brushed off. It's a lot more hard wearing and durable against like mechanical force. And this is a job in London we supplied for a whole house. deep Characoya. In mixed widths. 66, 92 and 145. And ingos and everything to match in a plain all round board. So yeah, we do translucent stains as well as opaque. Translucent looks quite a lot more natural. There's a little bit more reapplication. We'd say kind of 4 to 7 years between recoating. Dark shades last closer to the 7 because there's more pigment in the coating. Pigment's essentially like sunscreen to the wood, so it reflects more UV or also absorbs more UV into the coating rather than the wood. Yeah, it looks very natural and it's like an ultra matte finish. And the paint's all mixed to order, so we can color match different references and make up samples. It adds typically about £18 a square metre onto the cost of the wood, and that includes like texturing it and factory applying 3 coats of the coating. Here it is in a black, and here's it being applied in a sort of amber colour. Solid opaque, these are specifically matched to RAL codes, so any RAL code can be used for it. We've tried a few coating manufacturers and we use Rammers for this. The translucent one previously, that we use Axo Nobel, which is a Sikkens 771. Here we use Rammers. We used to use Technos, but we found the film was a bit thicker, could be more prone to peeling when it was weathering, and it looked a bit more glossy. So with the Rammers, it's a low film forming coating, and so when it weathers, it won't be prone to peeling, and it looks a little bit more natural, even though it's a paint, and it still allows the natural beauty of the timber to come through. And it's also like an ultra matte finish. And it's the same price as the other coating. And some charred and brush battens in a opaque black on an extension in Edinburgh. It's in the V&A in Dundee, in the restaurant up the stairs, some charred and brushed rain screen. We've done. So yeah, this kind of shows what the CU does in the picture, from like when it's first installed and then when it's cured over sort of 8-9 months. It'll start visibly curing after like 3-4 months, but to go that really solid kind of light color rather than a silvery grey takes about 8-9 months fully, and it doesn't really require much maintenance other than if there's like algae, lichen, trees that are giving off sap, then you might have to clean it. Yep. This is a project here, not too far from us, with the CU coating on thermal pine. So it goes from that chocolate brown to this very light colour. Like super consistent. You can see the sides, which aren't really facing the sun so much. They're super like light as well. This here as well. This is thermal pine as well. And you can see it makes the knots a bit less pronounced once it's cured, especially at distance. We apply Euroclass B coatings in-house. Other companies would send them down to England, or send the product maybe like 200-300 miles to get treated to come back to then get delivered to customers. So we can do all the processes in-house, so it's a lot more sustainable. Closed boards, cladding, the highest we can make cladding meet is the highest rating we can make cladding meet is Euroclass B. Open jointed cladding can typically meet a maximum of Euroclass D. We can do a Euroclass B coating in different colours, so we can do it in blacks and greys, and in kind of brown colours that match the shade of the timber, which is quite unique. And it adds about £27 a square metre onto the cost plus VAT. Not all the species we offer are certified, that have been tested with all the Euro Class B coatings. The species has to be tested specifically with that coating to make sure that it conforms. We're in the process of making sure that we get test data for like fracking and stuff that doesn't really have much data available on it. So we're looking at working with like independent labs to fire test with specific coatings to see if they can meet Euro Class B. We can also send stuff off for indicative testing. So if there's something weird and wonderful you want to try and the building controller's been a bit difficult, we can make up samples, coat them, and send them to a lab to get tested to see if it would meet Euro Class B or not. The cost isn't too prohibitive as well, and the lead time for that is like can be like 5-6 weeks. So it wouldn't hold up a job. Quality and grading's obviously super important. It saves a lot of time on site, so you're not the contractor's not sifting through stuff that's unusable and has to get rid of. It also allows the overage to be pretty accurate. Even like small little chips of the wood, we would grade out small defects when the knots fall out. One thing is that if there's end snipe in the wood, it can create little divots from the planing process in the ends of the boards. And so if it has them and you're specifying the length very close to, the length available is very close to the elevation height, you want to make sure that the timber doesn't have end snipe in it, because you'll notice it when it's reflected in the light. I think the next page goes into that a wee bit. So there, the bottom one, that shows what end snipe looks like. It's quite extreme, that version, but when the machine's all set up properly, you shouldn't have any of that, and it should be the full length. It's completely usable. In the top right, that's what Scottish larch with sapwood in it looks like. The sapwood is the non-durable part of the log. You see the white coloured part is high in moisture and sugar. If that's installed on a north-facing elevation, it gets wet, like just normal British weather, it'll likely mould and look like kind of this dark blue. It looks quite horrendous. So the only way to really mitigate it is to grade it out. So when we're processing the wood, we'd cut that part out or remove it from the production run. These are all the defects that we grade for. We're quite unique in that I think we're the only timber cladding company in the UK that produce everything in what's called one-piece flow. So typically and traditionally, most companies, they would do the bandsaw process, and then they would do the planing process, and then the sanding, and then they would do the coating, whereas we run everything in one line. And so the first board is checked for all these defects, and the first board we also make sure it's set up at the correct size. So we've not batched like a whole lot of product that's incorrect, and it means that everyone at every point is grading every single piece of wood that comes through. So it allows us to like really dial in the quality and make sure everything's consistent and matching. Consistency is also a huge part, especially if people do split orders over like larger developments. We keep samples here and we match it to those samples as it's being produced, so there's no like variation or like deviation in the product, which can be quite an issue if you want everything to blend in, especially if ordering in different batches. So yeah, ensure the timber's all sustainably sourced. It's been grown in, as part of crop cycles where the trees that have been cut down have been replanted, and FSC and PEFC certified sources. They make sure that happens. The timber we offer, it's all free of harsh chemicals, so it can be it's safe to work with and recyclable. All our production is powered by 100% renewable energy, and we're in the process of setting up a briquette line that takes all the sawdust, shavings, and chipped up rejected boards, and turns them into briquettes that can be burned in wood burners at home. This is what they look like when the rejected boards are getting chipped. And on the right's the final product. That was kind of testing out a machine that we bought that didn't really work. So on to Mark II. But essentially squishes them with 2 tons of pressure per square millimeter. So there's no chemicals or binders or glues added. It's just the timber shaft is heated up under so much pressure, it glues itself together. I realise we're getting pretty close to 2 o'clock, so I'll rattle through this portfolio, and then any questions, fire them over, and if anyone needs to go in the meantime, just head off. This is an umbra of cladding from natural charred and brushed deep char, which looked pretty interesting for a job in Edinburgh. This was some CU coated thermal pine for the Rassay distillery. This is it maybe a month after being installed, so it's starting to really turn. And then it'll go that really light colour after about 6-8 months. It's a project in Edinburgh, just some black opaque coated thermal pine. This was a job for Brown & Brown Architects. We supplied 465 square metres of prime grade oak for the ceiling, and it goes through the glass. It's the whole ceiling's done in this, and then 260 square metres of thermal pine Tiga clip rain screen with the CU coating, and it's still in progress. This was running it all. We would split the boards in half and then machine them. This is the oak for the soffit. The oak was 50 by 20 mil thick, so it's a 100 mil wide boards being cut in half to make the 2 individual bands, and then machining them, straightening them, smoothing them out. And it's on site, so we'll see some finished photos when it's done. It'll be pretty cool. So yeah, finally, why partner with us? Easy and efficient specification, ordering process. We don't have any minimum order. We just charge setup fees for if you want one length of coated and machined timber, it'd be a £210 setup fee, and that's up to anything up to 20 square metres. But we don't charge any extra per linear metre or any extra on the wood. It's just a setup fee that covers the fixed costs of setting up all the production process. So yeah, for contractors that need to get off site or anything like that, we're about 5 days for planed orders and about 10 days for factory coated orders, and that's produced and delivered to site anywhere in the UK. And we're always on hand for helping out with specifications. Set lengths we only offer everything generally in set lengths, so you know exactly what waste you'll have. We can produce anything out of timber, any colour, species, shape. And yeah, our showroom's near Edinburgh, and you can send in your clients. They can have a tour. We can explain the whole process. They can kind of see, feel, and touch the wood and get the whole experience and smell the place as well. It's an incredible smell. That's what a lot of people say when they come in. Larger developments, we can stage the deliveries. So basically, all the waste can be rolled over into an overage can be rolled over into the last plot, and so it effectively can reduce the wastage to zero, because you can quite accurately know what you would need for that last plot. Minimises transport because it can be delivered exactly where you need it. No extra cost for doing the staged deliveries. It's all free delivery over a certain amount. But when it's this size, it's typically always free delivery anywhere in the UK. And less risk of product getting damaged on site and theft, and helps cash flow. We have a Revit file, ICF file for ArchiCAD. We're on Architectures. We have a live price list, which I'll share with everyone. And that's always our up-to-date prices, so you can easily specify stuff without too much to and froing. We're on MBS source, so you can specify our cladding there. So yeah, and that's it from the presentation, if anyone has any questions.
I've got a question, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Just on the cost, so you mentioned like the base cost of timber, and those a range from like 30, 60, 70 for different timbers, so that might kind of influence which one you go for, but what is the kind of cost of the creativity bit? If you wanted to do different board widths, if you wanted bespoke profiles, coatings were £18. Where does that cost of the timber sit relative to the kind of turnout cost per square meters? I mean, broadly, what do you, for a decent, creative-looking, good-looking project, where would you be per square meter? What's the kind of range? Presumably, it's way in excess of the base cost for the timber.
No, we charge about. So if you want a totally custom, bespoke profile, it'd be like 400 plus VAT to make the tooling, design the tooling, cut out the templates, and make that profile. The process of actually running that bespoke profile is exactly the same as any other, standard profile. It's just making the tooling is the cost. Custom coatings, there's no extra charge for that. Like, all our paint is like manufactured to order, and so they just put in a different code when they're mixing it. We only just say that we supply the whole tin of paint, because otherwise we have loads of different colours here. Other than that, there's not really any extra cost. Like, that's all part of the service.
Okay, good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
No worries.
That was good.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Baron, just a quick one on your deep charring. Do you have to specify a thicker timber to begin with because you're eating into the surface of the timber, or is it just the standard thickness?
So standard thickness, it probably goes in about. You look at the deep char, it's probably only about 1 mil, so it doesn't affect it too much. A coir can actually, in this instance, can be supplied at 15 mil thick finished, which is like, doesn't even cup at that. So the char layer is probably like 1 mil, and so that's like a 19 mil board, which is still ample for like supplying this cladding itself. Yeah. Currently we sand. We put a radius on the edges of like planed all round, like a 2 mil radius, and we do sand it off. So sometimes it can lose a little bit the radius, but we're just working on making profiles that have an extra bit of timber on top. So we sand it down to the radius, and so when it arrives coated and sanded, you've still got the radius. And I'm not sure of anyone that does it in that way, but yeah, it's kind of the way we think about things, trying to make sure the product's like perfect quality. Hope that helps.
Baron, can I just ask as well, just a bit of a technical point of view, the thermopine that you share the information there, because you're doing that treatment with the thermo, does it has any effects after, like, let's say 5 or 10 years with the roses, kind of pulling out or splitting? Or if it does, then what is the treatment you advise to do?
Do you mean the thermal modification process? Like, if that lasts the timber?
Correct.
It lasts for the life of the timber.
Yeah.
It changes the wood at the cell kind of level, so it's not anything that would essentially fade or change. The process is usually done at the source, near where the trees are cut. So it would be done in New Zealand or in Finland. It typically makes the wood less likely to split or change as well, just because it's more stable. So yeah.
And the roses wouldn't probably pull out, or you have those holes that you showed the defects before.
Do you mean like the knots?
Like that is going to happen.
What did you say might pull out? The knots, like the wee round
the
bits?
knots, yeah. Because I have seen that quite a lot. We did I did a project before with charted timber, and the knots are actually pulled out, which I thought that they would have actually kept.
Was it a wide board? Was it like 140 wide, or was it very narrow?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So
it was 140.
Was it thermal pine?
No, actually that one was large.
Okay. Yeah.
But I have used in here a thermopine.
Yeah.
And I can see like a little bit difference to two of them.
So
the treatment?
the knots come from branches in the trees. The bark gets included, and so it's not attached. It's a dead knot. It's not a live knot. The live knots come from the very tops of the trees, where the tree's actively growing. So when you go for like a very wide board, it typically comes from lower down in the tree where the wood is, where the knots are dead, and then when they dry, they fall out. And so with thermal pine, we can do like a 185 mil width, but the knots are like horrendous. Like so many knots fall out, we end up having to grade out half the wood and recycle it to be able to give the customer a product that's hardly acceptable. So 92 mil wide has hardly any dead knots. 117 has not many at all. 140 has a bit more. We typically grade them all out here.
Okay.
The sawmills that cut the thermal pine before it gets thermally modified, they have like X-ray scanning, and they scan the wood for the dead knots, and they try and cut it out and reject it. And in thermal pine, the highest quality we've found is the 66 mil wide. There's not many suppliers that do it that narrow, but this comes from the very top of the tree, so it's pretty much no dead knots. Some companies, when we used to cut it out of a 150 wide board into half, but then there's a lot of knots, and especially on a thin board, the knots can snap. So it just, the wider width can make it, the wider widths can affect it. Narrower widths have less knots, but also it can depend on just suppliers and being quite stringent. We make a note of all our rejects, and we track and see from what supplier we have more dead knots and from which ones we have less, and we try and only work with those that have better quality. Because it's a shame if you specify something and it gets supplied and it's fitted and then it doesn't look good after a while. And it's too late because all the work's gone in. Yeah, it's the worst case scenario because it's a very awkward one.
That's great. Thank you very much for that.
No worries. Thank you. Okay. Anyone before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me.